All right, there we go. Good morning. Good morning. I'm looking out at some of my heroes, Bobby Yard, so many individuals. I'm just honored to be here today. I want to share with you today that during my time here with you today, everyone in this room is on a journey. Whether like me, you're on a journey to become a superintendent. Whether you're already a superintendent and you have ambitions to become a superintendent at a larger district. Whether you don't want to be a superintendent and you just want to have a greater impact where you are. Whether you want to transform yourself or your organization, everyone in this room is on a journey. Everyone. So the reason that you're on this journey is because you realize that God has placed something on the inside of you that only you can do, only the way you can do it. And the reality of this journey is that it's hard. And so what I would like to do is spend just a few minutes sharing with you lessons that I'm learning on my journey. And then if it resonates with you, please consider it. That's all I'm asking. And the reason that we all are not happy with stagnation is because we can realize that we can and will and have the capacity to do better, because all of us are waiting and excited about being able to take our organization from one point to the next. Whether that's a journey for next year or 3 years from now, we're all on a journey. This is my father. It's my mother, my big-headed sister, and myself. And I hit the parent lottery. When I was born, I had a mother and a father at the house to provide me with direction and guidance and correction, even though I didn't appreciate it at the time. My mother is a retired educator. My father is a pastor for over 45 years. My sister and I grew up with a drug problem, a very serious drug problem. We were drugged to church every single night. Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon, Sunday night, Monday night, revivals, Wednesday Bible study, Saturday, who has church? Every drug problem. Y'all pray for us, please. That's why we're so gospel oriented. But my parents were at home and they believed us and they instilled values in us and a standard. So no matter what happened on the outside world, no matter what the noise was outside, my parents always provided that stability and that sense of standard at the home. I'm not hard to point out in this picture. This is my elementary. And when I started elementary, I loved it. I loved elementary. When I got there, I loved being with my colleagues and I call them colleagues. It's the first grade. My colleagues and and my teachers in my school, and I loved it. And I loved it until around the end of the school year when the teacher pulled me to the side, Dr. Williams, and she said with me, I'm in elementary school. She said, you need to be tested for SPED. Not because I didn't have good grades, because I was an A and B student, because my parents had standards. Not because I was a discipline problem, because my parents had standards. And you bet not. Y'all hear what I said? Bet not. Y'all, you bet not embarrass Shana Nix. You hear what I'm saying? But because children that look like me needed to be in SPED, because as you matriculate through education, SPED covers you and it provides you with support, because kids that look like me are going to need that. So as I asked my friends, are you testing for SPED? SPED. And I asked Jeremy, who had way worse grades than I did, are you testing for SPED? SPED. And as I asked one of my who's discipline problem all the time, are you testing for SPED? So I learned real quick what it meant to look like me. See, I get up here every year and I hear people talk about, their experience with teachers and how teachers inspired them and how principals inspired them and how people inspired them to do great things in education. That wasn't my journey. I hated school. I hated school. By the time I graduated high school, I couldn't stand school. But I had a mother and father at home who pushed me and who put standards in place for me and who believed in me and who showed me what was possible. Because I didn't get that in school. And so I saw my friends and my extended family members who didn't have a mother and father at home. Because most of my friends didn't have a dad at home. All that correction that I didn't like, that I didn't want, but that I needed, they didn't have that. My cousins, they didn't have a father at home. So when I graduated, I had parents that loved me. I had parents that believed in me. And I was a good student, A-B student, no discipline issues. I was named Mr. Lamar High School at my high school. But I hated school because nobody saw me. Nobody invested in me. Nobody believed in me. Nobody showed me what was possible. But I had parents that did. So that's where the journey began. Because I saw so many of my friends who didn't have that. And I saw what happened to them. So my journey began to want to be a superintendent because in my mind, the superintendent was the chief culture setter. The superintendent was the one that was going to show the belief and be the visionary. So as an assistant principal, I attended every single school board meeting for 2 years. Now, my wife says I missed 3 years, but I think she's got a memory problem. But I attended every one, and I didn't attend to be seen. I attended those meetings so that I could understand the politics, so I could understand how the superintendent navigated through the politics. I attended those meetings so I could understand the policies. I attended those meetings so I could get a better understanding of when I become a superintendent, what do I need to do? Then when I became a principal, I led with excellence. Everything that I did, I said, I've got to do it with excellence. So as a principal of a middle school, of a principal of a high school, my high school was named as one of the top 30 schools in America for closing the achievement gap. When I became a chief of schools, I studied with my superintendent. Even when I was a principal, I would sit with my superintendent at the time. His name was Marcelo Cavazos, principal of Arlington Independent School District. He would always take time to meet with me. As a chief of schools now, I meet with my superintendent before and after school board meetings. I study because on my journey, I want to have the greatest impact. So this is not a game to me. Each one of these books on the screen I have read multiple times, except the one that says Great on Their Behalf. That just came out in March and I just finished it. I've read these multiple times because I have to know. I want to know. I want to have a great impact. And it's not just about reading books. It's about understanding how to have a great impact as a superintendent. Each one of these superintendent contracts, these are not images from Google. This is from my file because I study superintendent contracts on my journey. Oh yes, I studied them because all a superintendent has is their contract. And I want to know what's a strong contract, what's a weak contract. When a superintendent gets fired, I go back and look at their contract. Where are the holes? Where are the problems? Where are the issues? What could have they done better in their contract? When I get a contract, I want to make sure it's a great contract. I don't want to be railroaded by that because I'm on my journey. I study superintendent entry plans. I don't just collect those. I study them. I literally read them and study them. What makes a good plan? What makes a bad plan? I actually look the first 90 days that a superintendent is in their job, and I correlate back to their plan. Yes, my wife, when she sleep at 1, 2, 3 in the morning with the kids, I'm up studying superintendent entry plans. And when a superintendent, after a year of being there, after Bobby Yard, I just mentioned one of my heroes. I'm not playing. I've studied his superintendent entry plan. I studied it. And now to see that he's a superintendent of the state of Texas. I mean, he doesn't know who I am, but I know who he is. And I know who the rest of you guys are because I study you because I'm on a journey. And what started to happen was people started to tell me, oh, it's time for you to be a superintendent. Oh, you're ready to be a superintendent. Oh, and I started to believe I needed to be a superintendent. That became my North Star on my journey. And I started to put my self-worth in becoming a superintendent. And all my friends that were in the aspiring superintendents committees, like I was, they were getting superintendent jobs and I wasn't. Here's the first lesson that I've learned that I just want to share with you for consideration. Do not let your destination define you. You are not your destination. You are not your title. You are way more than that. And on the journey that we're on, it's the impact that we're having on the journey that makes the greatest difference, not the title. But I'm learning that. And so as I'm learning that, not to let my destination define who I am, all the preparation, all the prayers, everything I want to do to ever become a superintendent, after 21 superintendent applications. Did anybody know what it takes to put in just one application to be a superintendent? 21 applications. I finally got a call last year. But I didn't just get one call. I got 3 phone calls. I got 3 phone calls to be a superintendent. All the prayers had been answered. The problem was I got 3 phone calls for 3 superintendent interviews, and they were scheduled for the same week. All over the state of Texas. Yeah. And I was prepared. And I went on all 3 of those superintendent interviews armed with all of the information on my journey. Yeah, I went there. I sure did. And I interviewed all 3. 1 week, and I got 3 job offers. I interviewed for 3 superintendent jobs and got 3 superintendent job offers at the same time. So with counsel, with guidance, with prayer, checking with my wife, checking with my family to see where we go, I accepted one of those superintendent jobs. And I was named last year as lone finalist for a fast-growing, high-performing school district here in the state of Texas. But on my journey, for those of you who know, when you become a superintendent or you're named as lone finalist, there's something called a 21-day waiting period. Fortunately, it didn't work out for me. And I was devastated. Devastated. But that taught me a lesson. And I'm just sharing with you for your consideration. The lesson that I'm learning from this is that disruption always follows intention. Disruption always follows intention. Anytime that you intend to do something good, you have to understand that there will always be disruption. There will always be something that tries to derail you from your purpose. There will always be, anytime you try to do something good, there's always going to be a struggle, an obstacle, a challenge. But what I'm learning, when disruption follows intention, the disruption can do 2 things. It's either working for me or it's working on me. But disruption is part of the journey. And I have to understand that because that's part of my journey. And here's just a tidbit for you. If you haven't yet experienced a big enough disruption, you need bigger intentions. Somebody told me to say that again. If you haven't yet experienced a big enough disruption, you need bigger intentions because disruption always follows intention. Here's another thing. Journeys are full of facts. The fact is that our journey is not going to be smooth. The fact is that we're here to renew, to design, to transform, but it's messy and it takes a lot. And it sometimes takes some heartbreak and it sometimes takes a lot of things that go on. Journeys are full of facts, but what I'm learning on my journey that I just want to share with you, what I'm learning is this. When your attitude is right, the facts don't matter. See, we learned that yesterday from Miss Valentine, right? She had the right attitude. I don't know if y'all heard, but she said she quit asking why me, and she started asking what? Why not me? She had the right attitude. When your attitude is right, the facts don't matter. Let me prove it to you. Have you ever seen a one-sided coin? Have you ever seen a one-sided piece of paper? Have you ever seen a one-sided piece of bread? See, some of y'all are laughing. It's not that you haven't seen it because it doesn't exist. No, you haven't seen it because it can't exist. Because it violates one of the laws of it violates the laws of physics. It's the law of polarity. For every action, there's an equal and opposite what? Reaction. So there is no such thing as a one-sided anything. So what happens is when a situation occurs or happens, we put a frame around that thing based on our perception or our experience or our emotions. And we'll frame that situation as a negative situation because all we're looking at is one side of the situation. But it's impossible for anything to have one side. There's always 2 sides to a situation. So when things happen, the reason when your attitude is right is because we put frames around things to focus on them. That's why pictures go in frames. Because we want people to focus on what's inside of the frame. So when we frame a situation negatively based on our perspective, our feelings, our emotions, and we think that's the only side of it, we're wrong. Attitude determines altitude. So embarrassed, frustrated, but thankful that I have a job. Still, last year, I, with my head down, hung low, headed back to my district. While everyone I knew asked me, what happened with that district? Aren't you the superintendent? What happened with it? And I had to walk through that daily, weekly, monthly. But I got to a school, one of my campuses, and I just happened to be there on this particular day, on this particular time. It was the first day of school. And there was a particular student transferring into this school. He was going into the 5th grade. His name was KJ. And I watched KJ. He did not want to be there. Just so happened I was there at this time, Dr. Dupree. KJ, I watched on the first day cuss out his teacher, the assistant principal, the principal, and then with these 2 eyes, I watched KJ cuss out his mother. And I had just about enough. So I was going to show everybody in this school how to handle a young black youth. Yeah. So I went up to KJ, bowed down, got eye level with him. I said, young man, I don't know what's happening, but I'm so excited you're here. It's going to be my pleasure to support you this year. I forgot something I said, because I don't want to lie to you. I said, it's my pleasure or something. And I said, how can I help make sure that you have a great day? KJ looked me in my eyes and said, F you. But he didn't say F. No, that's the true story. Yeah, the first day of school. And I realized that KJ hated school. But I looked around. I didn't see KJ's daddy. And KJ's mother didn't seem too concerned that he had just said F me. Yep. And when I realized, learned this later, I was going into the 5th grade, but he read on a 5th grade. This is the 5th school that he had been to. And so I made a decision. I made a decision to show up every Tuesday to read with and for KJ. And when I showed up every Tuesday to read with and for KJ, KJ did not want to see me. He did not want to read with me. He did not want me pulling him out of class. And I got a whole bunch of FUs and other stuff in my repertoire. But every Tuesday I showed up. And every time I would show up, I would call his mother. And I would never be negative. And I would always say, hey, I enjoyed my time with KJ today. Hey, KJ read at least one word today. Hey, he didn't cuss me out today. Hey, Mom, thanks for that. So forth and so on. And I would always call Mom. Great relationship with Mom. And eventually, Mom said to me, it was around maybe November, Dr. Nix, I just want KJ to graduate high school. That's it. He'll be the first in our family. I said, why just high school, Mom? Why not push him to attain to the highest level of education? Why not push him to be a doctorate? Get his doctorate degree. Mom said to me, it never even entered my mind that he can earn a doctorate degree. That's not even I didn't even know that was an option. I said, Mom, push him. You've got to be that at home that the world is not. Push him. He can do it. Just a couple of weeks ago, guys. I was at a conference. Principal called me. Remember, I'm showing up every week. Principal says, hey, KJ wants to know where you are. So I went to go see KJ. And KJ looked at me and he said this to me. I'm there to read with him. He looked up at me and he says, what's a doctorate degree? So I said, before I answer your question, can I ask you a question? He said, yes. This is just a couple weeks ago. It was right before Mother's Day. I said, what are you getting your mother for Mother's Day? He said, nothing. Like, duh, nothing. Right? I said, KJ, would you mind if I answered your question tomorrow? He said, yeah. Actually, he said, yes, sir, because I don't play that. So I showed up the next day. Look at that smile. And I showed KJ what it means to be a doctor, what it feels like. I wanted him to experience what it's like to have somebody see you, to have someone invest in you, because he didn't have that at home. Which brings me to my last journey lesson that I'm just sharing with you for your consideration. Nobody is impressed with what you don't have time for. But everybody is impressed with what you make time for. And it's what you make time for that makes the difference. Educators, we're difference makers. And so I just want to encourage you as we're renewing ourselves, as we're designing and planning, and as we're transforming ourselves and our organizations. I just want to remind you of my lessons that I'm just sharing with you for your consideration. Number one, remember, don't let your destination define who you are. Number two, remember that disruption always follows intention. Number three, remember that when your attitude is right, the facts don't matter. And lastly, remember that no one is impressed with what you don't have time for. But everyone is impressed with what you make time for, and it's what you make time for that makes the difference. In all that we're doing, let's not forget that we're doing it for children, not for titles, not for ego, not for money. Definitely not for money. We are doing this because we love, we believe in, and we are encouraging and motivating students. And as long as that is what we're impacting on our journey, I'm good with that. So for each of you in this room on your journey, I look forward to celebrating when you get to your destination. I'm going to enjoy the journey. Thank you.